All right, and as it is 10:30, and as I promised, we would start promptly at 10:30. Let's get going. Thanks so much for coming back. And our next presentation is on the Calumet Stormwater Collaborative. They have conducted a workforce development study that I think will be very informative in helping us think about workforce and equity and green infrastructure issues. Our speakers are Margaret Schneeman from Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, Riggio from OAI, and Lisa Krause from Illinois Department of Natural Resources Coastal Management Program. So with that, Margaret, I will turn it over to you to start.
Great, thanks Lisa. So as Lisa said, today we're going to talk about the Calumet Stormwater Collaborative Training and Maintenance Work Group. First, I'm going to talk about our needs assessment, and then we'll talk about how we've moved forward to implement the needs assessment. So my name is Margaret, and in terms of the needs assessment, we conducted this to better understand how to direct our work in this space. First, I'd like to acknowledge the Metropolitan Planning Council, Calumet Stormwater Collaborative Training and Maintenance Work Group members, as well as our survey and case study participants for all their help in helping us with the needs assessment. I'd also like to acknowledge our funding from the Illinois Coastal Management Program and OAI. Excuse me, because I'm fighting allergies today. So this work really came out of the work of the Stormwater Collaborative. The Metropolitan Planning Council has been leading the collaborative since 2014. The intention of the collaborative is to bring together a diverse group of stakeholders to address the negative impacts of stormwater in the Calumet region. The collaborative itself is comprised of 4 work groups, including data and modeling, planning and policy, education and engagement, and training and maintenance. And together with OAI, I've been co-chairing the training and maintenance work group for about 5 years now. The specific goal of our work group is to ensure long-term functionality, cost effectiveness, and commitment to stormwater infrastructure through the alignment of workforce development, training, installation, and maintenance capacity within the Calumet region. And so through extensive stakeholder input process, we identified the overarching issue facing our group as being the lack of maintenance of stormwater infrastructure assets over time, with the consequence of this issue being declining performance or even the complete failure of the infrastructure assets. And so we really wanted to set about better understanding why there was a lack of maintenance and what we could do about it. In our assessment, we collected a lot of information. First, we wanted to really understand the local experience in the Calumet region. And so we conducted a survey and gathered local case studies. We inventoried training opportunities. We documented best practices that had been used by others across the nation in addressing this issue. And then we used all this information to really formulate actionable recommendations. And I'm going to very briefly summarize the results of our work. Before doing this, I do think it's important to provide some regional context, particularly as we're looking at this issue through an equity lens. So the Calumet region is located on the southern portion of Lake Michigan. It spans from southeast Chicago to northwest Indiana. For purposes of our needs assessment and our work, we limited the analysis to the Illinois portion of this region, which is shown on the map here. It roughly corresponds to the geography of the Illinois Millennium Reserve. So the Calumet region really does differ from the larger Calumet region in some very important ways. Compared to the larger region, the Calumet region has experienced greater rates of outmigration, has a lower labor force participation rate, has a higher unemployment rate that's almost double that of the entire region, and also lower median income, and also is majority non-white. So I think it's important to keep these socioeconomic characteristics in mind as we discuss our work. So first, to better understand local issues, we conducted case studies and we undertook a survey of the CSC membership. This work was really designed so that we could gather information about local green infrastructure projects and identify case study locations. So this map shows our case study locations, as well as some pictures from the case study sites. Some of the key takeaways we really gleaned from the survey and the case studies are that maintenance responsibility is typically contracted out. All of the case study projects did include maintenance plans in the project specifications. However, the project managers were typically not familiar with the training requirements and maintenance personnel, and the projects hadn't yet fully entered the long-term maintenance period. The next thing we did was to conduct an assessment of training and workforce opportunities in the region. One of the overarching issues we found in connecting stormwater investment to economic development is there's really no one generally accepted definition of the green infrastructure cluster, industry, or occupations. Talking to stakeholders about this, we really learned that occupations can be difficult to categorize within traditional classification systems. And this is because of the emerging nature of the green infrastructure industry, the hybrid nature of workforce participants, as well as industry fragmentation. Nevertheless, we did find several efforts that had done this before, and we were able to draw upon these analyses to inform our own work. And so we looked at Chicago area employment, wages, projected growth, education, and training requirements for GI maintenance occupations. Some of the findings are that green infrastructure related occupations are projected to grow around, on average, 8% over the next decade. In addition, these occupations typically either require no formal education at all or just a high school diploma or equivalent, and training is typically occurring on the job. In conducting this analysis, we also considered the career pathways for green infrastructure, starting with maintenance and going into supervisory, project design, and project management roles. This trajectory of career development is clearly important to meet the economic development objectives that we have for our region. So using the information that we gleaned from the workforce analysis, we then conducted an inventory of education and training capacity within the region. And one of the things we found is that there's an extremely large number of formal and informal training opportunities. However, a majority of these opportunities do require either investment in post-secondary education or an existing professional or industry affiliation. In addition, we also found there's no widely accepted green infrastructure credential or curriculum, with the exception of the DC WEF National Green Infrastructure certification program, which was mentioned earlier, and which is definitely a step in the direction towards providing a credential. After we did this, we really wanted to develop a better understanding of how investments in green infrastructure connect to workforce development opportunities. And so we looked at how other regions across the US have addressed this issue. Specifically, we looked at Philadelphia, Cleveland, and Portland. Some of the key takeaways from this interview is that green infrastructure investments do create positive economic impact. They create jobs as well as creating and generating local tax revenue. These positive economic impacts are clearly more important to communities with higher than average unemployment and lower than average income. With such a large diversity of stakeholders, as was previously mentioned, creating partnerships can definitely allow for implementing project strategies that leverage multiple benefits, and also setting green infrastructure standards, conducting monitoring, and delivering credential training can really help alleviate a lot of the community concerns over long-term maintenance, and of course, then ultimately ensuring the success and intended function of the stormwater assets themselves. So finally, we distilled all of these recommendations from our assessment, all the information from this assessment into recommendations to inform our own work. And I don't have time to go over all of those, but the full set of recommendations is contained in the needs assessment. So I'll just mention a few of the key ones here. First, we really recommend assessing the community's financial capacity to conduct long-term maintenance prior to installing the green infrastructure. We also recommend incorporating maintenance training requirements into procurements, contracts, and permits. We recommend partnering with workforce development, economic development agencies, the University of Illinois Extension, and others to maximize the benefits from the project. We recommend service sharing to increase municipal capacity to implement and manage projects. And finally, we recommend delivering trainings in partnership with NGICP. So with that, I'll pass it along to Kara with OAI, who's going to talk a bit about how we've moved forward to implement some of these recommendations. So thank you so much for your time, and take it away, Kara.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kara Riggio. I manage stormwater projects at OAI, and I'm here to talk with you this morning about a project we are piloting for municipalities to share services to maintain green infrastructure. I'm going to just spend a minute. Sorry, my slide's not advancing here. A minute talking about OAI. OAI is a workforce development organization, and we focus on underemployed and unemployed individuals, many of whom have been incarcerated or homeless, workers who lack the skills to do their jobs safely, emergency responders with limited access to equipment and training, and employers who need skilled workers, as well as communities who have been hard hit by economic decline. And we see green infrastructure as an opportunity for workforce development, being able to connect those who are unemployed or underemployed, particularly from minority communities, to jobs, either within the private sector, ecological restoration firms, park districts, municipal departments of public works, and to set them on a pathway to further career opportunities. And last year we were approached by the Great Lakes One Water Consortium, which is an initiative initially funded with $1 million investment from the Great Lakes Protection Fund. And the partnership has received additional support from the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation and the Kresge Foundation. GLOW includes 27 community foundations and their local partners. And you can see on the map the different clusters of teams that have been developed around the region. There's 6 different teams, which are carrying out their own planning processes. And we were approached by the local foundations for the Lower Lake Michigan team to go ahead and pilot this project that we had been thinking of to do the shared services for green infrastructure maintenance. And so our local foundation team includes the Chicago Community Trust, the Legacy Foundation, the Evanston Community Foundation, the Unity Foundation of LaPorte County. And like much of the conversation this morning, the Calumet region and Northwest Indiana, which is the geography we're primarily focused on, suffers many similar issues to what's been happening across the country around green infrastructure. There's been grant funding and amazing projects identified and constructed, and over time, due to budgets that have been stretched too thin, or a lack of skilled maintenance crews for this specialized type of service, the projects have become more of a liability than an asset. And so this project aims to share maintenance services through trained and skilled workers that can provide a high quality maintenance at a reduced cost. So some of our key milestones, which I wanted to share with you here, we're first to conduct research around what it means to share services between municipalities. We partnered with the Metropolitan Planning Council and Daylight to conduct this research. We also explored with green infrastructure owners, and to date, it's been primarily municipalities. In phase 2, we do look to work more with private landowners on the need and potential for providing this service of green infrastructure maintenance. We conducted a training, which Lisa Krause is going to dive more into later in our presentation. And then right now, we're in the process of sort of pivoting from all the lining up work and conducting our research to actually piloting the services for the field season this year. And evaluating lessons learned and scaling up over the next 3 years. So some of the basics of sharing services. The idea is to procure high quality services at a reduced cost. We are working with multiple clients on a single contract. And by doing so, we're capitalizing on geographic proximity and economy of scale. So the GLOW shared services model, so GLOW is the acronym we use for our Great Lakes One Water project, is that we're aiming to protect community assets through high quality maintenance, reduce costs for municipalities, develop the workforce, and focus on equity. So here we're focusing on low to moderate income communities of color who are disproportionately impacted by flooding. And I'm not going to read this entire slide to you, but I wanted to include it as a reference because I think this is some important work that's been illuminated in the research of why municipalities may choose to share services. And so I'll just run through a couple. One municipality providing services to could be sharing equipment. They could be combining purchasing power to negotiate better rates. And they could be going in for joint bids and managing separate contracts. And they could be working with multiple departments within a single municipality to coordinate on a shared services contract. And shared services really run a broad spectrum. And so I included this chart just to give folks an idea of the different ways that shared service agreements could be arranged. And they really range from approaches with very high levels of autonomy, so just a verbal agreement or a memorandum of understanding, all the way to much more complex models where you could potentially be focused on regionalization and merging across county lines, et cetera. So some of the key lessons that we learned from the research, and the folks we partnered with to do the research did interviews with over a dozen practitioners from across the country and the region. And all of them had the same list of key things learned, which was that leadership has to be committed to the collaboration. They need to be compelled to action. That's typically by cost savings. There need to be shared goals, a clear scope, and accountability. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Lisa Krause, who's going to dive more into the workforce development component of our project.
Great. Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so this is our training day report that was held on March 10th. And I'm just having a little bit of an issue here with making this full screen for some reason. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I'm Lisa Krause. I'm from the Illinois Coastal Management Program, which is a part of the IDNR. And this is the training program. So as Margaret mentioned, we are representing the Calumet Stormwater Collaborative. And this project grew out of the training and maintenance group. And it was identified that this was necessary because of the ongoing need for maintenance and management and the unique skill set required for green infrastructure, and the knowledge that the green industry has a lot of job openings, but not enough well-trained people to fill those positions. We worked together in the training and maintenance group to develop an outline of what we felt would be the skills that were required for the training program. And then we identified industry professionals that we knew of that could lead these different modules. The day was laid out to introduce stormwater and green infrastructure. And then there was introduction to soil science. There was a opportunity to learn how to read plans and discuss what interplay is in place for planning in green infrastructure systems and citing them. We had an industry professional who does workforce, who's out in the field, lead explanation on what you can expect on a typical day on the job with special highlights on maintenance and safety. And representative from the Chicago Region's Trees Initiative taught about the role of trees in green infrastructure and in urban environments. And Heidi Lusler from Parkland College helped do the plant communities lessons about where to site and maintain plants in these systems. And then we had a special component on career resources and resume workshop at the end, led by OAI. Additional components that we wanted to include was a focus on local case studies. We had lots of opportunities for hands-on learning and assessments throughout the day. We wanted opportunities for networking, as well as a resume and interview workshop and connection to professional development organizations. The format day, the program was offered for free with a free lunch included at the South Suburban College in South Holland, Illinois, which is in the Calumet region. It was a full day program during the week, and we wanted to emphasize not just green infrastructure skills, but also extending beyond to all of these different career development skills as well. I had initially identified our target attendees to be people that are new to the field of green infrastructure and may not be very familiar with native landscaping in general. People that may not even be that experienced with landscaping work. Also people that are not quite ready for the National Green Infrastructure Certification Program, which is the 5-day program. And these people may also be returning to the workforce or have employment barriers. So initially what we found is that we were having slow registration, and we internally kind of thought maybe we started advertising a little late. So we decided to expand our networks a little bit to reach a broader audience. But keeping in mind that, if we're going to reach our target attendees, we're going to need to identify a better approach. So what we ended up doing was deciding to, have the program regardless because, there was interest from the beginning, but we would do a abbreviated version. But that final week, all of the trainers reached out to their networks and we were able to fill the roster. And that was because we expanded our outreach beyond our initial target audience. So initial lesson learned is that we really would like to focus more on expanding our outreach and our advertising and promotion of the program to find these people better. So here are the people that came. We ended up with 13 people for our pilot training. And they represented both Illinois and Indiana. We found through a pre-training survey that most of the people were already employed in the field, but felt that they needed additional job training in order to do the job they already had. These people included DPW, Forest Preserve, Parks. There also were grant managers and landscaping crew members. There were 4 people that were currently looking for jobs or looking to change jobs out of those 13 that were there that day. Most of the people who were there when polled were just looking to learn the basics of these systems in order to be able to provide guidance to other people. And most identified as having very little previous knowledge of green infrastructure. After the completion of the program, we found that through our exit survey that most people felt that the training exceeded their expectations and that they were also really interested in pursuing the National Green Infrastructure Certification Program. people felt that all of the topics were interesting and wanted to learn more about every one of the topics. They wanted more time spent on the topics that we presented. And also, they were very pro engagement and outreach with a broader audience as well. So through our internal reflection with the training and maintenance group, we identified a need for improving our marketing. We've brainstormed some ideas, but really interested in hearing your thoughts on how we can do a better job. And we identified our niche in understanding that there are people already out in the field and that need additional training. And we're looking to see how we can fill that gap between what is currently out there and what people need that isn't being met by the 5-day program. We would like to continue to offer trainings, but there's been a little bit of a shift in the project leadership right now. So we're trying to discuss what the future would look like. And we also are very interested in continuing to build relationships across communities. Another discussion that we've been having is that this is an important topic to keep in the forefront of people's minds, even with the coronavirus and COVID-19. We know that during this time of social distancing that it's going to be difficult to have in-person trainings, and also coupled with the fact that we're entering the raining season now, it presents additional obstacles for how little that we currently understand about how stormwater issues interact with coronavirus, meaning that with people sheltering in place at home and with flooding areas and flooding basements that can lead to mold, that might compound respiratory issues. It's just things that we're discussing. And also the impacts faced by frontline communities that are dealing with stormwater issues are also similar frontline communities that are experiencing coronavirus more aggressively. And also with the US unemployment rate growing so high, it's important to think about how green infrastructure maintenance is an essential service where people can work while social distancing. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. We have a couple questions that have come in. Let's see, and Tony's going to put up our poll questions. On the subject of partnering across authorities, cities, counties, etc., what were ways employed to overcome the strong need for local control of projects? For example, what kind of accountability structures were most successful towards overcoming resistance? Any of you have thoughts?
I think one thing we can do is share the research document that the Metropolitan Planning Council and Daylight compiled for us. We are in the very nascent stages of sharing services, and this is our project right now is grant funded, and so we are able to offer the services for free in the first couple of years, and then hopefully build the case for municipalities to build maintenance into their budgets in the future. And so we have not cracked the code on this, but we are in progress. And so, so some of the things that we are deploying right now, we were able to negotiate our service provider contract initially, and OAI sort of sits in an interesting position. And I realize this doesn't fully answer the question that was asked, but I wanted to make sure that it's mentioned. Because we're grant funded to pilot this project, We are sort of in the position of the payer, but we are not a landowner. And so we've structured multiple agreements where one is between us and Cardno is actually the contractor that we're working with to provide the services, and we are in the process of working with our municipal partners on an access and indemnification agreement, which sort of lays out the different levels of liability as appropriate for the landowners, the service providers, and then OAI as the payer. But I think that the research document that we can share more broadly with this group may have some good insights for those bigger questions about shared municipal agreements.
Great, thank you very much. There was another comment about the shutdown and impacts, but Lisa, I think you talked about that. Is there anything, Margaret or Kara, you want to say about impacts of the shutdown and coronavirus on projects and this kind of program?
Sure. I'd say we're all sort of responding to things in real time as everyone else is. And right now, people who are working outside are able to social distance and kind of implement safety protocols to make sure that workers are safe. And so from that regard, we are continuing to move ahead in terms of, we're doing it because we have a project budget and we have multiple communities. We're doing site evaluations right now to figure out which ones we can handle and sort of take on in year one. But we know that workers are not driving in the same cars or trucks, that they're spaced, that they're wearing masks, that they're not sharing equipment. And so from that regard, people doing the maintenance work are still able to work. From the job hiring side of this project, I think we offered the training that Lisa spoke about on a Tuesday, and by Friday, the governor of Illinois was making a statement that everything was shutting down the following Monday. And so I think a lot of companies, and our contractor included, have not been able to bring anybody else on. They're really just concerned about keeping the staff that they have and work that they have. And as everyone's budgets are changing in real time, they have to be responsive to that. And so from the hiring perspective in this moment, I don't believe any hiring is happening, at least as part of our project, but the maintenance component is moving ahead.
All right, thank you so much.